What is up, YouTube? Now, as you know, I'm reviewing the Hannibal films, and I've already reviewed Silence of the Lambs, so let's move on to the sequel, Hannibal. Now, this movie comes out 10 years later. You know, that's a long time, and you'd think, okay, maybe they just waited for a quality story idea. I mean, it's based off a book, so, I mean, the book wasn't that good, so maybe they wanted to change it. And to be fair, they do change some things, but they follow up Silence of the Lambs with Ridley Scott's How to Piss Away an Oscar in 131 minutes. A year prior, this motherfucker made Gladiator, and this is the next film he made. Now, to be fair, it's not a completely horrible film, but this is the sequel to Silence of the Lambs, and it's just a massive disappointment. I mean, just the premise is kind of dumb. There's a manhunt for Hannibal after the events of the last movie, and Clarice, after a drug bust gone wrong, is looking for a sort of redemption. Meanwhile, Hannibal's only surviving victim, Mason Verger, now Hannibal basically cut off his face, or like made him cut off his face after he was high on this sort of drug, and broke his spine. So now he's got basically no face, and is wheelchair bound, so he's kind of pissed, obviously. And he's planning a brutal revenge. Mason Verger is his name, if I haven't mentioned that. He's planning a brutal revenge, and he actually intends to feed Hannibal Lecter alive to wild boars. Now, just hearing that, you can tell this is really fucking stupid. And to be fair, this is objectively a pretty bad performance for Mason Verger. But Gary Oldman is so hammy that it is fucking glorious. I mean, if you watch movie Defense Force, Jim Sterling mentions the rule of ham. This movie, Gary Oldman is in the rule of ham like full effect here. He's fucking hilarious. And, you know, it's sad because this is not only a performance from a very good actor, Gary Oldman, but it's a follow-up to, and as I said, Buffalo Bill was probably the most realistic serial killer portrayal ever. And Mason Verger's basically like a lame James Bond wannabe villain. Like, I mean, James Bond villains generally are pretty good. This is like one of those if they were lame. And he's just not a good, he doesn't fit in this franchise, you know. And in terms of the recast, I must admit I was pretty shocked at first because Julianne Moore looks completely different from Jodie Foster. But to be fair, she is doing her best. Even though I still prefer Jodie Foster, I can't really fault Julianne Moore. She's not giving a bad performance. She's doing her best, and she's relatively entertaining. Anthony Hopkins once again kills it as Lecter. That's probably the biggest positive I can say for this movie is Anthony Hopkins is just brilliant. He always is, and he's still brilliant as Lecter. You know, even 10 years later, the guy just snapped back into the character, and it was awesome to watch. But for the most part, the film, when it's not being boring, it's being silly. Ray Liotta, the character, is just kind of a silly character, and you know, that's coming from a very serious franchise, so that's pretty disappointing. And if you remember in my last review, one of the only problems with Silence of the Lambs, in my opinion, was some of the over-the-top gore. They basically pumped that up to 11 in this one. This is basically a slasher flick. It's like a dark comedy slasher flick, and it's not good. It's just, yeah, it's just not a good watch. You know, the first one's awesome, this one's not. And the ending is so stupid. Yeah, Ray Liotta basically eats his own brain. This is the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. Really. Unlike Silence of the Lambs, though, Hannibal received a critical panning, and it kind of remains a stain on the franchise. Now, while there are some good performances in here, like Anthony Hopkins, again, is amazing, for the most part, the film just isn't good. It's poorly constructed. The scenes with Clarice generally are pretty boring, and that's a big shock, because she was a really good character in the last one. And it's not even Julianne Moore. The writing for this character in this movie is just not good. And, you know, we waited 10 years for this. And that's really sad. But, you know, all in all, Hannibal's just a disappointing sequel. Not a very good movie, especially compared to Silence of the Lambs. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Wasn't very good. So, I guess stick around for my review of Red Dragon. This is T Quentin1 signing out.